All right, let's look at question 6. So it starts out by telling us a baker uses 5.5 pounds of flour daily. How many ounces of flour will he use in 2 weeks? Use words, numbers, or pictures to explain your thinking. So you can see down here, I'm using a picture of a calendar week. It actually looks a lot like a tape diagram. I'm not going to solve the problem you need to solve. So I'm just going to take that and I'm just going to adjust it really quickly. And I'm going to say instead of the baker using 5.5 pounds of flour daily, I'm going to say that the baker is going to use, let's say, 3.2. So I'll wait for my pen to start working. So I'm just going to scribble that out, and I'm going to say he uses 3.2 pounds of flour daily. So that means on Sunday he's using 3.2, and on Monday he's using 3.2, and on Tuesday, and so on, and he uses that every day of this week, and he uses this every day of this week, and 3.2, 3.2. So if I count this all up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days in the first of the 2 weeks, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 in the second of the 2 weeks. So another way I can say this is he uses 3.2 pounds of flour daily every day for 14 days. Okay, so I could add this number up 14 times, or I could take 14 groups of that. And you'll notice that that gives me pounds. And the question is asking me how many ounces. And they even showed me right here. They said, hey, remember that a pound is equal to 16 ounces. So I could either figure out how many pounds and then make that conversion to ounces, or I could convert this to ounces right away and figure out how many amounts of days. Either way, that will tell me how much flour he has in 2 weeks. And I'll have that amount, and I'll have ounces here. Okay, that's important because then when we move to the next question, it says the baker's recipe for a loaf of bread calls for 12 ounces of flour. If he uses all of his flour to make loaves of bread, how many full loaves can he bake in 2 weeks? So if I go back to my answer here, is how many ounces of flour he's got in 2 weeks. And now instead of putting it into groups of 3.2 pounds of flour a day, instead I'm going to put it into groups of 12 ounces. So I'm figuring out how many groups of 12 are in that amount of ounces I got in part 6A. And it says full loaves. If I have a remainder, if I have like 8 ounces, that's not enough for another loaf. If I had 6 ounces, I'm not going to make half a loaf of bread. I have to figure out exactly how many groups of 12 I have in that, and that will tell me how many loaves of bread I can bake. Okay, so I take whatever my answer is from part A, and I'm putting it into groups of 12 here. Then we carry this answer, however many loaves I come up with for this. So I know how many loaves, and I take this and I'm going to apply it to part C. Part C says the baker sends all his bread to one store. If he can pack up to 15 loaves of bread in a box for shipping, what is the minimum number of boxes required to ship all the loaves baked in 2 weeks? So I'm going back to this problem and saying, okay, this is how many loaves I have. I'm putting it in groups of 15. The only difference now is that I need to ship all the loaves of bread. So that means even if I have a box that's not full, that's fine. I still need to pack all of the loaves into boxes. Okay, so all of those parts, part A, we have to figure out how many ounces. Part B, we have to figure out how many loaves. And then we take that answer and use it to figure out part C, how many boxes. Those 3 parts of 6 are all related to one another. Now we're going to shift gears and we're going to look at parts D and E, and they're a little bit different. This is part D. It says the baker pays 80 cents per pound for sugar and $1.25 per pound for butter. Write an expression that shows how much the baker will spend if he buys 6 pounds of butter and 20 pounds of sugar. So many of you did an awesome job of finding the answer while not actually writing an expression. Let's go to the next slide and review what an expression is. These are expressions. 3 plus 5 is an expression. 64 divided by 8 is an expression. 4 times 11 minus 3 plus 5 is an expression. 7 times 2 plus 3 is an expression. These are expressions. They showed the math that would need to be accomplished to find a solution or an answer. But you'll notice if we go back to these directions, it just asks us to write an expression. Now, most of you figured out there were two things you needed to do. You needed to figure out the cost of the butter, and you needed to figure out the cost of the sugar. You did those things separately, and then you put them together. You don't need to do that. You just have to write an expression, like one of these, that shows how do you find the butter, how do you find the cost of the sugar, and then you would put them together mathematically. If it helps you to use parentheses, you certainly may. Okay. The part we need to take away from D to go on to part E is this. 80 cents per pound for sugar, because as we look at the next question, it says chocolate sprinkles cost as much per pound as sugar. So another way I can do this is I can just cross this out and say chocolate sprinkles cost 80 cents. We need to find a tenth of the cost for 100 pounds of chocolate sprinkles. So essentially we're buying 100 pounds at 80 cents per pound, and then we want to find out how much is a tenth of that. You need to use a place value chart. If you're needing help remembering how to use a place value chart, you can go all the way back to the video for question 1. I review how to do that. And essentially you're just showing the shifts. You should be able to do this math mentally, but you're going to show how do you decide what your answer is using the place value chart. Good luck.